Okay, you're on.
All right, thank you, Anne. Thank you, everyone, tuning in tonight. We are here to do a panel forum with 5 outstanding candidates that are interested in being our next Deputy City Manager. Before we go any further, I want to give a minute to our interpreter to make some announcements in Spanish because we will have interpretation available. Indira?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Indira Guzman, and I'm here with the Community Language Co-op. And the organizers of this event tonight have made a commitment to language justice. What that means is that we want everyone to participate and engage in the language of their heart. For this, we are going to use the tools of simultaneous interpretation. So on the bottom of the screen, you will see an icon that says interpretation. Make sure you click on that and select the language that you prefer to listen in on. We will have Spanish interpretation for this event. I will repeat this now in Spanish. Muy buenas tardes, muy buenas noches. Mi nombre es Indira Guzmán y estoy aquí con la Community Language Co-op. Y esta noche los organizadores de este evento han hecho un compromiso a la justicia del lenguaje. Lo que significa eso es que queremos que todos participen en el idioma de su corazón o en el idioma en el que se sienten más cómodos. Para esto vamos a usar la interpretación simultánea. En la parte posterior de su pantalla van a ver un icono que dice interpretación. Por favor, seleccionen el icono y pueden seleccionar el idioma en el que prefiere participar. Tendremos interpretación en español esta noche. También puede silenciar el audio original para que no se escuchen los dos idiomas a la misma vez. Si tienen preguntas, por favor, avísenos. Muchas gracias. We can turn on interpretation now.
All right, Antoinette, I'll trust you to do that and say thank you. All right, so with that, just so people are aware, we have until 7:30 this evening. We're going to try to move through a variety of questions, and we'll start with a different candidate each time as we go. For those who are watching and listening in, we have our questions in front of us here, and we've tried to take what came in on the Our City site ahead of time and some recruitment questions. So if we don't get to your questions tonight, I just want to let you know that, but we will take those and hopefully wrap them in because we have some pretty broad stroke questions. So hopefully that will happen, but I want people to know that. And then also at the end, towards the end of this forum, everyone will have an opportunity on that Our City site. There will be a feedback form. We're not going to turn that on until closer to the end, but I'd like you to know that in case you can't stay for the entire event. Please check back later. That will be up for a while. All right. So,
Jenny, it's
yes.
Teresa. I'm a voice coming through. I want you to know that Melissa might have had the power outage that she had earlier today. So just want you to be aware that Melissa's not on right now. And hopefully we'll be seeing her on soon.
Okay. I'm not going to start with her. Hopefully she'll get right back. But let's go ahead and get started. I know I'm very excited and interested, and I know our attendees are as well, just to learn a little bit more. And so, Farrell, I think I'll start with you and just ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself and what brings you to this position.
Excellent. Thank you, Jenny, and good evening to everybody who's taken the time to tune in and check us out. We, I think we'll all share some regrets that we're not there with you in person and able to talk face to face, but certainly I still appreciate the opportunity to be able to continue to learn more about Fort Collins. A little bit about my background. I've spent a career in government, and I've had the opportunity to work in higher education. I worked several years as a contractor for the Environmental Protection Agency after that, and then landed in a local government. And this was a deliberate choice. My first boss and mentor at the University of Washington had also been a lifetime public servant. And I remember her telling me that working in cities in particular was just the closest opportunity you had to connect with the people you were serving. And by proxy, she had just found in her experience that that's where the most passionate people were as your coworkers. And so far, that advice has paid off as true for me. I've had the privilege then of growing professionally in one organization, the City of Bellevue, since I walked in the door in 2006, and have moved up from being a program manager all the way up to my current role as the assistant city manager for the city. And a lot of the things that we're known for, if you haven't heard of Bellevue before, we are the midpoint between downtown Seattle and Microsoft's headquarters, soon to be have a few light rail stops as we have a 14-mile track that will connect those two geographic locations. And Bellevue is a very diverse city, which I think we'll talk about more as the night goes on. A lot of complexity to the community and to the organization, and it's been extremely rewarding and one of the best experiences I could ever imagine. So why would I consider then moving to Fort Collins, moving my family in the middle of a pandemic? And that is that about a year ago, I started reflecting on really, from a career perspective, like to take the skills that I've learned and the leadership that has really molded me and go apply that in a new community. But it would take a lot for me to consider that. There are lots of local governments, and there's a lot of great jobs. But there's always a list of 5 or 6 that I keep my eye on. And from day one, Fort Collins has been on there. And so it's one that my wife and I have talked about over the years, and really was excited when this opportunity came up. Looking forward to the opportunity to learn more and to keep connecting, again, the strengths that I have, and learning new approaches, learning from new leaders, and really would love the opportunity to come to Fort Collins and put that into practice.
Thanks, Kyle. Farrell, I'm going to go to you next.
Thank you, Jenny. Hi, I'm Farrell Buller, and I'm currently the Deputy Town Administrator in Erie, Colorado. And I have been a Colorado native, and so living here and serving here is just a love for myself. And I've worked in 4 different municipalities, so the city of Boulder, the city of Lakewood, the city of Commerce City, and now Erie. What I bring to the table as far as potentially joining the Fort Collins team is knowledge not only of Colorado and the local government and the people and the lifestyle here, but my scope reaches nationally with the professional peers that I regularly interact with and learn from. I definitely have a passion for making government better. I think that we do a really good job, and I think we can do a really great job at other components. And so I'm thrilled to have this opportunity and learn more about Fort Collins and let you learn more about me. Thank you.
Thank you. Trying to manage the mute button and everything else. Forgive me if I do that occasionally. Lon, would you like to go?
Sure, thank you. I'd honestly be surprised with the nature of the community and the core values that they have if you didn't hear some common themes from all of us that are in the candidate pool for this one. For me, I'm an Iowa native, graduated from Iowa State University with my undergraduate and master's degrees. I spent about 5 years in regional planning before moving over to city management just a little over 20 years ago now. I started in a small city over here, not actually too far from where I'm at, about 40 minutes away. That was a great place to get a good start in city management. It was the second city in Iowa to adopt the city manager form of government back in 1920, and so they have a long history of it. But it also has the benefit of being the only majority minority community in the state. So it gave me a real appreciation for the challenges and benefits of living in a community that was incredibly diverse. From there, moved over into Wisconsin for several years in the southwest corner of the state in Platteville. So that's a college community, so got some exposure to the town and gown issues that you run into occasionally when a university is a major presence in your community, and then came back to Iowa to Marion, where I'm at now, and I've been here for almost 14 years. One of the things I think that's a little bit different about my background, besides I'm a lifelong public servant, which you're going to run into at this caliber of a position, but I have dual degrees. I have a degree in community and regional planning, as well as a degree in public administration. And what that really lends itself to is thinking about how cities work as a functional system and the role that has in building a community rather than just the management function in isolation. I've worked in lots of different places so far, growing urban centers. Much like Kyle said, I always have that list of communities in the back of my head that if something comes open that I didn't want to get to the end of my career and say, you know, what would have happened if I had given that one a shot? And Fort Collins is definitely one of those. For me, I bring passion and creativity for building community, and I'm also a dedicated student of good government.
Great. Thank you so much. Melissa, I'm going to go to you next. And did you hear the question? I know you lost power for a moment.
I did. I missed that part.
Okay. So our first question, just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you bring to this position.
Thank you. My name is Melissa Cantarero Weiss, and I am the Director of Administrative Services for the City of Wauwatosa, Wisconsin, which is in the Milwaukee area. I am a graduate of Fort Collins High School and also of Colorado State University, so I'm very excited about the possible opportunity of returning to my hometown. I did go on from Colorado State to obtain my Master's of Public Affairs from one of the top schools in the United States for that MPA program, Indiana University. And I have 12 years of experience in city administration in communities in Wisconsin and also in Missouri. I have supported and overseen almost every city department during that time, including human resources, communications, public works, utilities, engineering, administration, information technology, city clerks, tourism, parks, just to name a few of the areas that I've worked in. I'm a well-rounded leader with a focus on collaboration, service, really a service mindset, a drive for excellence and transparency. I'm very excited about the opportunity to join Fort Collins, which is a dynamic community with a lot of positive opportunities for growth and furthering my career in that next step.
Excellent, thank you. All right, Mark, you are up.
Great. Good evening, everybody. Appreciate the virtual participation this evening. I was just really excited about the opportunity when this popped up. It was one of those that, you know, as everybody says, it's just you do a double take. One of the few communities that you look at as not only a great community to live and work and visit, but as an organization that is always looked at the top of the municipal game. I live, my wife and her two wonderful twin daughters in Louisville, Colorado. I currently work for the City of Boulder as the Economic Vitality Senior Manager. Prior to that, I was the Assistant City Manager at the City of Englewood in Colorado. I started my career to continue the Wisconsin theme tonight. Started my career in Madison, Wisconsin. That's where I did my undergrad as the Food and Alcohol Policy Director. Before I did that a little over 5 years before returning home to Colorado to pursue my master's in public administration from CU Denver. So I've had a career as my colleagues in local government. And, you know, really, when I look at Fort Collins and look at what makes it a great community, one of the things is the commitment to excellence. And it's something that I've tried to emulate in places I've gone in Englewood and now in Boulder. So the opportunity to bring my skills and add to the team and really hopefully just add to the great work that's already being done, but really bring a commitment to those community goals and values and make that long-term investment in the community. Certainly a big move for any one of the panelists tonight, and we're just really excited and honored to be part of this process.
All right. Well, thank you all. Now we're kind of hitting our rhythm. This will go well. So I'm going to continue to alternate, and Farrell, we're going to start with you on our second question here, which is, Fort Collins community members are highly engaged in our community. What would you describe are the benefits and the challenges of a highly engaged community?
Sure. So the town of Erie also has a highly engaged group of residents. And the benefits of that and things that I really love about that are twofold. One of them is that our residents have expertise in all facets of life and all facets of business and professionalism. We have doubled our population since 2010. So we have new people all the time. And I think that's really exciting because they become an extension at times of staff, an extension of our discovery. Our advisory board members, we recently started a sustainability advisory board. And the members on that committee have 20 plus years experience in different sustainability measures. So we often look to them to help us meet goals, meet objectives, create the future, get better ideas. It's not uncommon for staff to reach out to our residents with questions. I think the benefit also is it helps you gauge if you're doing good governance, if you're making great decisions, because your community will speak up and tell you. So having those conversations up front and twofold, having them know you, doing life with them, I think is a huge benefit to being able to serve in your community. Some of the challenges that I think arise with an engaged community and engaged residency is, at times people just have really different backgrounds and really differing opinions. So, hearing those out, although it's really important, it's really necessary, it helps you make great decisions. At times, I think it's difficult to then bring everybody along once a decision's been made. I know from overseeing oil and gas in our community, it's a pretty hot topic. We live in Weld County and in Boulder County, and the philosophies are not the same when it comes to oil and gas. So as the local government designee for that topic, I often am learning from both sides and both perspectives. But again, once our Board of Trustees and staff make a decision, really encouraging folks to understand or have the opportunities to come along or, be respectful with other community members' opinions is sometimes a challenge. Thank you.
We never lack for meaty topics in local government. All right, Lon, we're going to go to you, please. And anyone, let me know if you want me to repeat the question at any time.
Okay. So I think in the benefits column, one of the things that having a highly engaged community creates is just simply better decision making. The more people that you have involved, there's it lessens the chances of missing important pieces of the puzzle with whatever the issue that you're attempting to solve is. I find that internally and externally, really, the best teams are the ones that are made up of people from different disciplines and perspectives, but that share a passion about that topic. When you're selecting teams and figuring out who should be on it, if you find the people that are passionate about it, you don't have to stand there over their shoulder to get them to contribute 100% plus to the topic at hand. It also, much like Farrell just noted, it lets you tap into some of that outside expertise. It's really hard to have coverage from any and all disciplines that your community might have internal to your organization. So it lets people bring that outside perspective to the table. I also find that it presents opportunities really to build community support around the topic. I've really always felt that people are much more likely to accept the outcome and understand it if they know how the decision was made. And that's really one of the building blocks or fundamental elements of transparency in local government. On the flip side, there are challenges that it can create. One being time. A robust public process just simply takes longer. Government is built that way, though, and that's to ensure that we don't just run roughshod over the rights or desires of different segments of the population. If you rush public policy, you often end up with bad public policy. It can be very difficult sometimes to achieve consensus, especially if it's topics where the different parties are diametrically opposed, and you have to sometimes just accept that whatever the decision is, you're not going to make everyone happy. And of course, having an engaged population also leads to sometimes some interesting conversations in the grocery aisle on Sunday afternoons. When they know who you are, you get ask questions 24/7, 365, whether you're at work or not.
It's true. All right, thank you. Melissa, what's your take on a highly engaged community?
Well, thank you so much. Community engagement, communication, and transparency are near and dear to my heart in government administration. It's something I've championed at each community that I've had the opportunity to serve. I really see the benefits of community engagement as being that your projects are better vetted and become a better fit for the community at the end of the day. It's an opportunity for diverse thought at the table, which leads to better outcomes, and also an opportunity to build in feedback loops with the people that are most impacted by the project so that you can make adaptations as necessary. In terms of some of the challenges with public participation, I think in today's day and age, we need to meet people where they are, and sometimes that means adapting how government does engagement, which used to be a lot of in-person, not so much anymore, but coming to those public hearings at 7 o'clock at night to talk about things, and that doesn't work for everyone's life, either work or at home. So how can we change that to be more online, to be more engaged with people where they are, and get more robust feedback that way? And also really breaking down complex issues into more minute and consumable information on social media to get people to click through to communicate and engage with you on online and digital platforms can be some of the challenges that we face. I think one of the biggest challenges, though, is really bringing neighbors with strongly opposed perspectives to the table and creating those opportunities for them to hear from each other and understand that there's varying views and differing opinions amongst stakeholders to really get to that community sentimentality at the end of the day.
Great, thank you. Mark, gonna go to you.
All right. So I can certainly relate to being in a fully engaged community. Certainly Madison was the same way. Boulder has to be up there. I think there's a tremendous advantage in having an engaged community where, as a couple have mentioned about the outcomes just simply being better when you're getting those different perspectives, where you're really taking the time and knowing that you're setting up every time for a robust public process. So I think there are so many more advantages to having an engaged community. I think the challenge is really in that environment is being consistent as a city and how we're setting the expectations for engagement every time. And we sometimes gear up for a major process that we know is going to be particularly controversial, yet we let something else through the cracks. So I think it's really important before you start an initiative or project or budget cycle or whatever it might be, that you're taking the time to really understand what you're asking the community. So are we coming to all of you in a consulting fashion? Are we just asking you your opinion on one aspect of something? Are we just informing you of what is coming your way that you don't really have much impact? Or are we upstream? Are we talking about really collaborating with you and working with you? And I think establishing those expectations at the outset is really important. Again, meeting the community where they are was mentioned by Melissa. That is really important, not just because everybody is engaged in different ways, but they're not always going to be engaged because the city calls a meeting or tells you to attend, show up to a certain place. So I think setting those expectations, opening those lines of communication, and then rethinking how that interaction takes place where it might not be a city meeting. We might be tacking on to somebody else's meeting in a different type of way.
Thank you. Okay, Kyle.
So definitely some strong themes emerging, and I play right into that. One thing that I'd want to share is that my background did open up in open government compliance. So I supported the Freedom of Information Act process for the EPA for several years. And my first role at the city of Bellevue was as the public records officer. And that really shaped my view of what the value and importance of public engagement was. It was one of those, we talk about data-informed decisions. That was something we started tracking, was what are the themes that we see coming in terms of requests. And chances are that was an indicator that public engagement didn't quite work. And it may not have been an intentional issue, but sometimes we just don't hit the mark. And it's important to know that so we can learn from it and do something differently. So when we'd see that trend, that was a conversation that I could then escalate up and begin that conversation. It's something that I still look for now. Involvement, we've heard a lot of the benefits of it, and I agree completely. I think with the public process, it's going to take time, but we can either invest the time to do it up front and do it with a plan, or we can get close to a decision where there hasn't been an engaged community and find out that it's not satisfactory. And then we're going to spend the time to retrace our steps or to start over. I think a key element of that then, of trying to prevent those mistakes, is by having that plan developed up front. When projects are moving forward in the introductory stages with council, lay that plan out there. They know the community, our staff knows the community, and obviously the community then has an opportunity to give feedback as well. The challenge then is, as people have covered, there's a lot of different views and different interests. And when you can work through that and come to a common ground, it's great. But sometimes you can't satisfy every need. And in those cases, the best thing we can do is to own the decision and communicate why the decision was made. What did we hear? And make sure that everyone knows that their participation was valued, and hopefully they'll continue to participate in the future.
Great, thank you all. Great, such good answers all the way through. I really appreciate it. Okay, our third question is, what have you done to build relationships and partnerships in the community that you currently serve? And Lou, I'm going to start with you, please.
Yeah, I'd say that this is one of the building blocks of the success that Marion has had as a community, is our ability to forge partnerships. I actually had a little bit of good fortune when I came here, in that at the time that I came, the Chamber of Commerce and the Economic Development Corporation were one organization, and they were in the process of separating and going into discrete functions. So I got the opportunity to assist both of those groups with their recruitment for their new directors. And so that really let me in on the ground floor to understand what their strategic priorities were, what they wanted to achieve, and how that slotted together with the city. But that's really, one of the ways that we've tried to build partnerships. The typical way is for your city manager or city official to be on the board of an organization. So I get to do that. I get to be on the chamber board, the Medco board, the board of the Area Ambulance Association. I'm the city liaison to several different groups. But that really only gives you access to information. It's what you do with that information and how you actively partner with those groups that actually really forge those over time. I found a lot of success with those in starting to focus on small wins to help build the partnership in the initial stages, while still focusing on the long term to see what you can do for the community. Look for areas where the groups have common ground and common goals, and then bring them together so that everybody is in the room and that you hammer out solutions to it, so that everybody is all pulling in the same direction. It's really part and parcel of what I've been doing my entire career. When you start your career working in a 6-county region where your smallest city is 55 people, they don't really have a whole lot of capacity to get anything done without partnerships. So that's where you come in as the Council of Governments. You work with the county, you work with the state to figure out ways to address the needs that they have as the public. As a matter of fact, the community that I'm in now places such a high value on strategic partnerships that it actually is one of the objectives in our strategic plan. So both by nature and by marching orders, I work on it a lot.
Great, thank you. Melissa.
Thank you. I'll echo some of the other sentiments that we've kind of heard from candidates here this evening, that building strong relationships and partnerships is really the cornerstone of success for the work that we do, both internally and externally, in serving a city. I think one of the most important ways to do this is, as a resident of the community that you're serving, you do really understand what's going on and have opportunities to engage with neighbors in day-to-day life and in day-to-day neighborhood associations and community special events. And in attending those moments, you get exposed to a lot of different information, partnerships, and building connections, which really helps to serve the city well. Also, serving on boards and attending committee and commission meetings is very important. Here in Wauwatosa, I have the opportunity to be a Visit Milwaukee board member, which engages with tourism professionals across the Milwaukee region, making connections and helping each other to succeed in driving business and tourism to the area. Additionally, engaging with a variety of stakeholders is very important, whether that's business groups, downtown business associations, volunteer groups, and business owners, to really get to know what it is that's driving their business, what their needs and strategic goals are, and how can we as the city help to support them and deliver the next level of services that they may need, as well as building connections between varying business groups and community groups. In addition to these things, I have enjoyed having the opportunity to set up kind of quarterly meetings between some of the larger government entities and cities that I've worked for, so with the school district and the counties, and in some cases, some of our larger nonprofits as well, to talk about what are those community issues that are rising up that we all may be seeing, and how can we help and assist each other to provide the best service that's necessary in the community to respond to those problems. And in those types of collaborative moments, I think is when we have the best outcomes for the communities that we are lucky enough to serve.
Thank you. Mark, gonna head over your way.
All right. I'll talk a little bit about process in Boulder to really cultivate those partnerships, key partnerships and relationships. I really like the expression connection before content. And I think that just applies both internally in the organization and also externally with the community and stakeholders, is that you're taking time to develop relationships. You're remembering that we're all human beings behind the job or title or whatever it may be, that we're all coming from different places in life or just what happened that day. So I think having that sense of empathy and really taking the time to develop relationships across the board when the emotions are lower, when it's not something you need or we're not marching forward on a major issue. I think that really is foundational. In terms of partnerships in Boulder, beyond first establishing those person-to-person relationships, we had a ton of change in our community vitality department, which is along the lines of Fort Collins and economic health, really thinking about the local economy holistically. We didn't have a strategic plan. We needed to get to work on that. So I'll shorten the process for the sake of time, but it involved a lot of stakeholder interviews to say, well, this is where we think we ought to be positioned. These are the things we think the city would be good to be active in. These are the areas we don't think the city would be very good in. What do you think? What do you think your roles are as organizations? And really work through that process. And I think probably more importantly than that conversation was to act at the end of that, to take in all of that information and then to say, here are the results of your input as key stakeholders, and to say we're going to change some of our roles and responsibilities in our department, and we're going to make sure that we're aligned with our partners, especially as we turn towards COVID economic recovery, knowing that some of our challenges are different than they were back in January and February. And we wouldn't be in a good position today without our partners, without the Chamber of Commerce, CVB, our local Small Business Development Center, Latino Chamber of Commerce, without those partners, we wouldn't be poised to help in recovery going forward. So I think taking that time first, really getting to know that person to person and developing those key partnerships over time are critical to success.
Great, thank you very much. Got my order down almost now. Kyle?
Thanks, Jenny. I'm tracking you.
I know. You know what it is now, so if I mess up.
That's right. No, I'll assume it was strategic. Yeah, thinking about the issues that our communities face these days, they're well beyond that of a sole contributor, and even as a single agency to be able to take on. Thinking about what are the issues that are important in our communities: affordable housing, homelessness, transportation issues, even economic development and recovery, diversity, inclusion, and equity. These are all things that we can have a role in, but really in order to make a big difference and the difference that I think we all expect or desire, it just requires partnership off the bat. One of the values that I look for in an organization and have really grown and prospered under is the notion of breaking down silos internally in the organizations. The leadership team that I get to serve on every day is made up of 16 very talented individuals who are all very well connected. And so any one of us can turn to each other and reach out for a connection, for an introduction. We can leverage those relationships. We have relationships with other government agencies and are looking to try and find creative solutions. And that's definitely a regional thing, but it's also a national. You start looking for what are the cities that you have something in common with, and how can we share information and strategy? I think within the community too, that's the one where I want to make sure that we don't get lost on as well. There are so many talented individuals who know the issues, who know what's driving, and also have so many good ideas. I know working in a community where we have a strong technology background and many tech companies, we benefit greatly from reaching out to those partners and getting their ideas on how can we better use data, what are some opportunities to change the way we do business. And I think everybody benefits from working together, obviously.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, Farrell.
I definitely echo the sentiment that Mark indicated, where I think building your relationships and your networks before you ever need anything is a key component of partnerships. It's a key component of how to work together, because your intention is true and honest and authentic. And I think people recognize that. I think there's a level of government trust or government mistrust with residents and with stakeholders. And so, breaking down any of those barriers and silos ahead of that is really critical. As far as building relationships and partnerships, I would just say I tend to adjust based on the community that I'm in. So when I was working for the city of Commerce City, it was really important for a lot of the Spanish-speaking families and families that only lived in Commerce City part-time and needed to go back to Mexico, for their families to trust the Parks and Recreation Department and to trust the town with their kids. So I often found myself going to the English as a second language classes in the evening to meet them where they're at, to introduce myself, and to try to share our information. I volunteered at the Boys and Girls Club, again, so I could meet the families and meet the kids to break down any barriers of trust. When I came to the town of Erie, I noticed that our granting program and a grants to communities program wasn't very vibrant, and we hadn't had a lot of interest. And so I worked to reset that program and reinstitute it so that nonprofits or even parent-led organizations could really benefit. And I found that when somebody came in with a need or a request of how could the town help, one of the first things I just ask is, what are you looking for? What help do you need? I didn't want to be assuming that they needed just money or assuming that they needed us to do the work for them. And often I found that their request was not too extreme, that we could support that. I also will pick up the phone at any given time, and I will just look up an organization in my municipality or neighboring municipality if it's a topic that we're working on. And I just introduce myself and I say, hey, I'd like for you to be a thought partner with me on this topic for 20 minutes or so. I just want to learn from you. And I've put that practice on the forefront on a regular basis. And I've just really found that, again, when you just call to learn from people and that's your only intention, people are readily willing to share. What I do with those relationships then is I'm able to cross-connect them and to break down those silos as needed so that we can all help resolve issues and move them forward in our communities.
Super. Thank you so much. Okay, we are moving along. Our next question is, obviously our vision is to provide world-class municipal services through operational excellence and a culture of innovation. So knowing that, how will you contribute to this vision, and can you give us an example from prior experience? So with that, Melissa, we're going to start with you this round.
Thank you so much. This vision for world-class municipal services and operational excellence and innovation is exactly what attracted me to apply for this position in Fort Collins. This is really who I am as a local government administrator. I strive to always provide the best service possible and keeping our business and resident community in mind as we're providing that. And how can we continue to innovate and drive change? And innovation, to me, is one part driving that big picture strategic change, those large initiatives in a community. And the second part of it is really making smaller changes to how we operate our everyday business and our everyday services to raise the bar in incremental ways that better serve the community and our business community and our stakeholders. A way that I have really done this in 2020 is through my work supporting and overseeing the city clerk's team here in Wauwatosa. As everyone knows, this has been the year of elections and it's been the year of COVID. And here in Wisconsin, we have requirements to do a lot of labor-intensive processing of in-person absentee balloting, mail-in absentee balloting on the day of the election. And that process has had to change substantially beginning in April with our first election since the pandemic started through the presidential election here just last week. And so we took the opportunity to really review all of our processes ahead of each election and after each election with after action reviews to really plan for what was a 40-50% increase in paper mail-in ballots that we needed to process in a very timely manner. And we did that through innovating our processes, our setups, our staffing procedures, our training procedures, and many other things. Very proud to say that we delivered an excellent election here as kind of our top service in local government within a very robust time frame due to that innovation and that drive for providing the best service possible. So that is something that's near and dear to my heart, and I would really look forward to bringing that passion to Fort Collins.
Congratulations. Maybe now that it's over, but Mark, we'll go to you next.
All right. So I think one of the things that's really important in that drive for excellence, in that drive for innovation, is to make sure that the structures and systems you have in place in the organization really meet that need. And I know that Fort Collins has done a lot of work in this area to put those systems and structures in place. And we were not there yet in Englewood. And in order to really drive better service delivery, better outcomes overall, we had to change how we were delivering a budget. We were originally oriented in a very department-specific, department-only way. Each department brings their initiatives forward, brings their budget forward, and it wasn't strategic, and it wasn't focused on community outcomes. And so it was an overhaul of our budget process, really bringing in teams from across departments, across levels of the organization to work on those outcome areas and deliver a much more strategic budget. I think one of the things that, and I mentioned earlier about engagement, we also were not hearing from the community at all during this process. And so I know that there was some fear when I suggested that we need to do that. This is fundamental to delivering a budget. But what we learned from that is what the community definitely needed was more consistent communication and really changing the image of how the city was previously. And so that led to funding of what we call an Englewood magazine, but a publication that really displayed what we were doing as a city, displayed some interesting stories going on in the community. I think in terms, in terms of innovation, it's important to create a space where innovation is possible. So I mentioned pulling from all levels of the organization. I think it's essential that you have everybody participating in that leadership process. So all levels of the organization actually having those conversations about how we're doing against community outcomes, how our structures are internally, and informing that decision making. And I think the last piece of that is really creating the space to fail, which sounds counterintuitive to providing excellent service and innovation. But it is true that you have to leave that space to say, we're going to come up with a great idea and it might not work. But by allowing for that, I think you get one gem, and that's really what innovation is all about.
Excellent, thank you. Yes, Kyle, take it away.
Point. You bet. Great point, Mark. I think failing forward is one of the things that good organizations have to be comfortable with, and it's about learning and owning what happened. I think that's a great point. So Bellevue and Fort Collins have very similar DNA, and so pointing out the vision is to provide operational excellence with a culture of innovation. So City of Bellevue, our mission vision is providing exceptional public service, being a collaborative and an innovative organization that is future focused and committed to excellence. So very similar themes. This is how we operate. I think also similarly, we end up finding very high engagement scores, but also community surveys with feedback around satisfaction with the government, value for tax dollar, trending at 90% or within a percentage point of it. Bellevue also surveys our business community and asks them the same questions. It's a different audience, but it gives us a lens into how are we balancing the needs of the community overall. How we've done that internally, and what I would lean on in my experience to come and investigate how Fort Collins has done things. In Bellevue, we've had our internal cultural initiative. We've called it One City. Again, breaking down departmental silos, realizing that outside of the city organization, people don't want to have to see an org chart to know which department do they go to. My favorite example is always, if you're looking to have trees trimmed or even a sidewalk repair, does it fall over a utilities easement, or is it managed by transportation, or is it in a park? Most people don't want to know that distinction, and that's an easy one. So, early in my career, I was appointed by the city manager to help lead a lot of our innovation programs. I want to focus on the culture of innovation as opposed to having one or two big projects. I think it really becomes how do you do things and challenging the status quo. And one thing I would add is I think we're at a day and age that in order to do that, in order to be truly excellent and innovative, one of the things that we're working on is how do we blend in our diversity, equity, and inclusion program into our culture of excellence? Because without that, we're really not challenging the status quo as much as we think we are. And I think in order to really best serve the community, that's an important piece that can't be overlooked.
Thank you. Farrell, we're on to you.
Sure. So specific to how would I contribute to the vision of operational excellence and culture of innovation? I think one thing people would find internally or externally is I'm present. if we're having a conversation about something, if a topic is brought up by city council, if there's a new employee that's got questions at any level of our organization, I'm present for that conversation. I'm not only listening, but I'm hearing what's being said, and I file that away. At some point, it gets connected, right, to a puzzle to bring innovation forward. The other thing that this community could count on is me being responsive. I cannot stand it when people think that their idea or their question went into a black hole and nobody simply responded and reached out. So I am very responsive, whether it's email, calling back, talking face-to-face, things like that. Specific to an idea that I was able to help champion in Erie, when I was appointed as the interim town administrator and I oversaw the town for about 10 months, one of the things that I knew I needed to learn quickly was about our water portfolio. Water is one of the most precious resources, and there was a lot happening in 2018. There will be still going forward. The Public Works Director brought an idea forward of how could we potentially tap into some wells and some underground water resources, and would I support the idea of going to some landowners and seeing and doing some seismic testing, some 3D heat mapping to determine if there's water resources that already existed underground. And we talked through the idea. We looked at some other municipalities that had done this, and we did get our Board of Trustees to say, absolutely, let's take a look at it. We were able to work with all of the landowners necessary and companies in a pretty quick, confidential manner to determine where there are additional water resources that the town can benefit from. I think that's really important because I think in this role, your job is to look forward. It's not about only looking at today, it's about seeing what's happening today and then setting up your town or your municipality for the legacy and the success. Water, again, is one of those, and we know as Erie doubles again in population size, that's something that will be one of the highest resources that we can attain. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Lou?
All right. Thanks. So I think one of the things that Mark touched on that is very critically important to creating a culture of innovation is giving people that opportunity to experiment. And we use similar language here about calling it freedom to fail. And that's really fundamental to their willingness to take risks or try new solutions to problems. And frankly, that's something that can be really hard in the public sector because when you're using public resources, people are very protective of those. And if something doesn't go right, the public could remind you of that very vociferously. And I've always been willing to say, hey, this is sometimes the price of innovation is that you try things and they don't work. But then after the fact, you take a look at it and figure out, what did you do wrong? If it was a 10-step process, we're 2 steps wrong, or we're 10 steps wrong, and we need to scrap it and start completely over. Internally to the organization, we've done a lot of work to make sure that we are not siloed. And so our executive team functions pretty well together as a unit, and we bring those sticky problems together to everybody so that all of those people with different disciplines, the city engineer, the planner, the Parks and Recreation director, public services director, water director, library director, can hear what's going on and offer their perspectives as we look to find solutions to them. So one of the things that has already been touched on as well is looking for that leadership and that innovation at all levels in the organization. And one project in particular that we worked on that I think has been pretty successful in that is our new public services facility. Most of the time, that's not always the most glamorous thing because you're housing your garbage trucks and snow plows and everything out there. But we challenged ourselves to take a look at it and say, could we do one of these that could be a net zero facility? Could we do one that doesn't have an energy footprint. And so we took that to the staff and said, we need to accomplish a couple of things. We want your input on how this facility should be designed. So if you're an auto mechanic, we want to know how would you like your welding shop to be set up so that it can foster you to work at your highest level and make everything the most efficient that it can be. So the interior design, everything from the room placement to what's going to be in the workout system, to the locker rooms, was grown and developed by a system that was facilitated by an architect and the public services director that came from the employees in the public services division. On the energy front, it's going to have the largest geothermal well field in the state, and a future phase will add solar to the site. And according to our energy modeling, we should be able to achieve a zero footprint as far as energy goes with that facility by the time we're done. Beyond that, they were able to come up with some innovations that I hadn't thought of, in that when the facility is complete, we'll be able to convert our entire public services fleet over from current diesel to compressed natural gas, which will get us about as close to zero emissions as we can achieve without going full electric, and it will dramatically reduce our fuel costs. And then the mechanics figured out that if we did that and bid them all at the same time, we should be able to realize about a 30% savings in the cost of acquisition, and everything will use the same engine, the same transmission, the same brakes, and we should be able to realize additional savings through the cost of standardization across the fleet. So to me, that's if it hadn't been severely damaged by the inland hurricane we had a couple of months ago, we'd be having walls put up today.
Excellent. Well, I want you to know that we have a village that have our backs here that are letting me know that I have mispronounced your name. And so I will apologize and let you know that people are paying attention. So I apologize for that.
A lot worse.
Well, thank you. Okay, you all, we are on to our next question. And so here we go. The city has a strong value on sustainability and uses the triple bottom line lens, representing social, economic, and environmental concerns. So if you could please share an example of an initiative you've led that demonstrated the triple bottom line. And for this round, Mark, you're going to go first.
All right, thanks for the question. I really think that it's important that you have the right structure or process in place so that you have consistent outcomes when you're doing this type of analysis. I so much appreciate the structure in Fort Collins where you have those three buckets really in the same department, so that you're considering that impact when you're looking at those three areas in anything you do. A specific example, back in Madison, we were moving to develop a public market, which can be a variety of different things. I think the important component of that for this discussion is that a multi-million-dollar public investment that was going to be in some area of the city, not downtown, and that's about all we knew. So it was really important for us to design a process that considered those three elements, that was really inclusive of the entire community, respected our stakeholders, and started to drill down to some of those issues along the way. The social implications of that type of investment, again, where was it going to be located, what type of investment, and how was that a catalyst to the rest of the area? What was the type of concept? Was it about food access primarily, or was it about economic opportunity and incubating small businesses? The financial implications about whether or not it was a public-private partnership or whether it was a true public-only investment, and then the environmental impact of the development itself. And then if it was more of a hub, how about the traffic coming in and out of a site? Or are we really honing in on our goals about trying to keep food local and cutting down on those miles between production and consumption? And so it's a long way to say in an example from a long time ago, but especially when you're looking at some type of larger investment, or you're running that lens on your budget process, you want the structures in place to be able to consider those aspects in a very intentional way, almost so that the process becomes more important than the result, that everybody feels like that they were a part of it, and that those considerations were were within and embedded within the decision.
Well, thank you. Yes, Kyle.
So this is a good example of where I think we're learning that about 6 organizations that are similar, but not the same. And so I really appreciate, I was sharing with staff earlier today in some previous interviews, appreciate the triple bottom line lens. Similarly, from Bellevue, I've been using, we have a concept of Pick 3 Plus, which is balancing quality, customer value, and financial performance. And then the plus is continuous improvement. And I think where there's similarity in that is that sometimes you're going to have to balance choices. The goal is that you want to be able to do all 3 simultaneously. But in the event that that might not happen, you're going to have to really strategically look at what are the risks to one versus the other, or what are the potential trade-offs, and be upfront about that as we're making decisions. I think probably budget is on all of our minds right now. I know in Fort Collins, a very tried and true budget process got tipped on its ear, where a biennial budget became an annual budget, and some of the budgeting for outcomes processes had to change, and that's certainly similar. And I think as our leadership team looked at how are we going to balance our budget, not only for this year, for 2020, but also looking forward into the next biennium with so many unknowns, that was definitely, we were asking questions about those trade-offs. And while we don't use the triple bottom line as our filter, we do have those components are certainly at our heart, especially environmental service or sustainability initiatives, our ESI. And so those were questions we were asking ourselves. If we were going to have to diminish service levels, which we tried not to do, we really wanted to make sure that any choices we made weren't impacting the ones that have a broader policy or strategy behind it, like diversity, like ESI. So I think it's really helpful to be able to lead through these lenses.
Great, thank you. Farrell, you're up.
So in about 2018, when I was the interim town administrator, the town had recently completed a study along the I-25 corridor of basically what could happen along that corridor in the future. And the study indicated that it was really Erie's place to be able to have diversification of housing, diversification of job security, all different types of industries and commercial development. And so about 6 months after we finished this major study, and we learned financially how many dollars were leaving Erie, because we have a strong housing representation and not a strong employment and commercial goods representation. There was a large parcel of land that came up for sale on a confidential listing, and a developer called and said, "Hey, I know you all recently did this study. Is the town interested in purchasing this parcel of land?" And we worked quickly together to purchase this parcel. It's about 255 acres, and it's 1 mile along the I-25 corridor. Why is that important, and why did this, the triple bottom line come into play? Again, we think that that's Erie's long-term future from a commercial investment, from a sustainability practice, and for bringing in new residents, frankly, of a different dynamic. We've partnered with the landowner that is just north of us. He owns about 600 acres, and worked on strategizing a financial plan to bring through all of the utilities, as well as began working with RTD, or the potential light rail system. We have an old rail line that goes through there that RTD has purchased. So I think that's a good example of planning through the lens of all 3 items: sustainability, economics, and environmental concerns of a long-term project. It's a 10 to 20 to 30-year project. But again, I think that is a good example of how we've helped establish Erie's future and guarantee that it has a legacy for our people.
Super, thank you so much. Okay, Lon, we're back to you.
Okay. I really do love the way that this is articulated with the triple bottom line, because that's one of those ways that it just keeps those three core concerns in front of you as you go through the decision-making process. For us, one of the projects that I would really highlight that hit all of those is our Central Corridor and Uptown Redevelopment Project. Marion, much like where Farrell is at, is a fast-growing community and has been for a lot of its history. So the downside of that is that our Uptown district is sized for a city of about 8,000, and here we're past 40 and anticipated to hit 50 in the next 8 to 10 years. And so how do you address that? At the same time, we were a railroad town. The railroad's been gone since 1982 and left us behind a really beautiful brownfield corridor where the rail line was. So we bought that in 2003 and started to figure out, okay, what can we do with this? So we had a couple of problems. I'm a big believer that when you're looking at a project, you get it down to the core problems that you're trying to solve. So former bedroom community turning into an urban center in our own right. Former Highway 151 was the main corridor driving through Marion, old 4-lane road. 1.2 mile stretch of that street that went right through our downtown accounted for 54% of our traffic accidents in 1.2 miles in a city that has over 160 miles of street. So we had two problems that we were trying to solve. How do we address these transportation problems and reduce the accidents, take care of this brownfield, and look at opportunities that we can create more of an economic development incentive or opportunities for investment in our uptown? The piece that brought into the conversation, though, is what happens when you see reinvestment. Reinvestment a lot of times means, well, if you're going to get multi-story buildings, they're going to want to do market rate housing. So where does the affordability piece come in? How do you ensure that those units are accessible to everyone, so that if you're going to build this really new urban center and do all the fun stuff that we want to do with a streetscape and a plaza, that it's not only accessible to people of a certain income level? So for the last 10 years, we've been working on that project and are in essence replacing this 4-lane by building a parallel transportation corridor along the old railroad right-of-way with roundabouts that bookend a much larger area that are with redevelopment, our uptown area will expand into. So you'll see more multi-story, a lot of places that were old filling stations and things will get redeveloped into mixed use. We're building a new library right in the heart of it. But strategically, to make sure that we didn't forget about the social impact of it, we were able to use some of the city property that we bought for right-of-way to bring a developer into town to do an income-adjusted housing project. The first one that Marion has seen outside of a senior housing project in more than 25 years. And we'll continue to do that as we move down through there. So through the course of this project, we've been able to take an area along the old railroad that had no stormwater infrastructure, no detention, no filtration and cleaning, add that infrastructure, build this beautiful new street, provide opportunities for redevelopment, and make sure that it's accessible to people of all income levels. So it's been a long time coming. We'll put the last stretch of street in next year, just in time for the new housing complex to open, and looking forward to that one.
Exciting, thank you. Okay, Melissa.
Thank you. So this decision-making approach, like the other candidates mentioned, really resonates with me as well, and is similar to how we approach decision-making here in Wauwatosa. Knowing that you can't just look at things from one mechanism, but you need to have some breadth in your thought process about what makes for the best process, what makes for the best decision, and it should be a balanced approach for how you are thinking about it. So this three-pronged approach is very similar to how we approached a challenge here in Wauwatosa, which was the provision of crossing guard services. So here in the city, we are responsible for providing crossing guards for our school system that does not fall underneath the school district. And it is a long-standing contract that we have had, and we were experiencing fiscal challenges in meeting the needs of that contract and needed to make some changes in our staffing, and had really failed to get that across the finish line over a period of about a decade. At which point I was asked to take a look at that project and really wanted to bring a more robust decision-making framework to the table. And so similar to Fort Collins' triple bottom line, we really looked at both the fiscal aspects of the crossing guard project, as well as the social aspects of the project and the environmental aspects. So knowing we needed to make some changes to how we were funding that project and lower some costs, we started looking in at the various locations themselves to determine, do we have crossing guards in the right places? We mapped all of our students that walk to school in GIS down to their block and mapped out their most safe route to walk from their block to their school. All of our elementary schools are within a mile of where our residents live. And so we were able to look at that and then look really carefully at those social factors and those safety factors along that route to determine if we have the sidewalks, the signage, the crosswalk striping, the rapid flashing beacons, and all of those things that would elevate safety, including crossing guard placement. And then really started having some robust discussion with our residents about those environmental benefits. We needed to have these safe routes to school, our crossing guards deployed at the right places, and make these investments in order to reduce the number of cars on our road, to reduce congestion during peak traffic times of that morning commute and that afternoon commute. By taking this more robust approach and talking with our residents about more than just lowering the cost of a really important and vital service in the community about student safety and children's safety, and thinking about those social aspects, those safety aspects, deploying technology into the phones and iPads of families so they could see, I just hooked this red line and walk to school, and here's a crossing guard, and here's a stop sign, and here's the sidewalk, so we know it's safe. And touting those environmental benefits of using the program, we were able to make the changes we needed to the crossing guard program to lower our costs, resulting in environmental benefits, resulting in safety benefits, and community benefits. And so this triple bottom line approach is something that I've utilized, and it works very well.
Wow, so many good projects. Thank you all. That was a great question, whoever came up with that one. All right, we're gonna move forward. Those of you who have the list of questions, I'm gonna skip around a little bit here. So looking at how do you approach the challenge of bringing people together with different perspectives, values, or special interests to make decisions that are in the community's best interest? And then once again, if you have a specific example, please share. And Kyle, we're back to you starting us off.
All right, well, thank you. And I think this question focuses on the community, and I heard this earlier today too. I think we get to practice all the time internally too. I think the bringing together different perspectives is how we pressure test things and make good ideas better. So that's the practice to definitely welcome. It's very rare that a city the size or the complexity of Fort Collins is going to have any sort of this or that scenario anymore. There's not two choices to make, especially when you start out with. And I think we face that a lot in terms of we might even have common values or desire the same outcomes, but really have different perspectives on what the right answer is. So in terms of from my approach, I really have a facilitative leadership style, and so that's been I get used quite frequently in those situations to be able to go in and be able to listen to what are the common interests. And it can be, again, we talked about engagement. These are the times when we have to invest the time, we have to invest in making sure that we're iterating and taking ideas and making them better and seeing if we can get to a point of common values, if not common interests. One of the contributions that I make in my organization a lot is then bringing that perspective. Because of that facilitative, because of some of the programs that I interact with the most. I'm one that would frequently ask the question then of, who are we including in this? What have we heard? And again, I was earlier today talking about this with staff around our community. About 15 years ago, started talking about light rail coming through our town, and that was our community engagement. That really defined engagement. I'd say what we've learned over the last 3 years is that it's something a lot richer in terms of being able to have a variety of ways of getting perspectives in a variety of formats. So I guess the last thing, I think we're right around time. The last thing that I want to really highlight is in order to get all of the community's best interests, there are going to be times that we miss someone, and there's going to be, or when compromise isn't possible, or somebody's going to be left unhappy. I think the most important thing that we have to work on as local government leaders is always reporting out. What did we hear? What did we consider? And being able to speak to how our decisions align to that feedback.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Where am I? Farrell, we're going to pick up with you.
Okay. So the town of Erie, a lot of people know each other. The people that have lived there for 20 years and their family members have lived there for 20 years. So there's a lot of connection. Lots of people are related, which is it's very fun. It also at times leaves people with hard feelings. And so occasionally you'll get kind of a mismatch of, oh, I represent the town of Erie, and maybe the response isn't overly positive. And so at times it's kind of figuring out what's going on, or maybe what went awry, or what's going really well, and drawing from people that are already connected. One example where we were bringing people together with different perspectives is we have really passionate and very, very educated residents around the idea of history and historic engagement, historic landmarks, historic cataloging. And Erie doesn't have necessarily like a cultural center or historic center. So what we were seeing is we were seeing 3 different groups all representing different times in history for the town of Erie forming. And the town didn't want to pick and choose who could get which resources from the town, whether it was financial or it was space to store artifacts or hiring a curator, things like that. So, the town started learning basically where this is coming from. And what we did is we asked if each of these groups would send representatives to sit at the table together, put their feet under the same table and have conversation. And through a series of conversations and through a series of influencing, we were able to bring all 3 of these really dynamic historic groups to the table for a conversation about what they knew about Erie's really rich history. We're a mining town. We have families related to families that were mining. We have, other families that homesteaded there. And so they had all these artifacts that were basically in one of their buildings that they were storing. And we were able to bring these 3 groups together and help them each craft a vision so that they could be complementary and not duplicative. That enables the town now to support all of them. So that's a special interest project that I'm really proud of, because without long-term families and rich histories, it will be gone, it will be lost. So I'm really thankful that those groups came together.
Great story, thank you in that. Okay, Lon, how about you?
Sure. Oh, nobody noticed I had a little bit of a flashback moment there when Melissa mentioned crossing guards. I had my own experiences with that issue while I was in Wisconsin. Had to relive that for a little bit. For me, this was one of those areas where I think bringing people together to really develop down and discern what's in the community's best interest is a huge opportunity for community visioning. We've actually done 2 successful rounds of this here. The first one dating all the way back to 2008, 2009. We dubbed it our Imagine 8 process. We partnered with the Chamber of Commerce and other organizations in the community to do it. Ultimately, it was just mining the community for ideas about what are things that our community doesn't have that we should put time and effort and money into over the next 10 years to develop. What do you want? And ultimately, we had more than 1/5 of the community's population participate in that. And they provided us with 1,800 different ideas that ultimately a steering committee from the community winnowed down to 100. We took that 100 back out to the community to narrow it down and ultimately came up with what we called the Great 8, the ideas that we were going to work on for the next decade to bring to our community. That's what led us to our partnership with the YMCA to create the new Marion Art Rec Center and YMCA rather than both of us doing it on our own. It led to us creating our new library that's currently under construction. But since those 2 were the last projects on the horizon out of the original Grade 8, about 1.5 years ago, we embarked on Imagine Next to come up with the successor round of ideas following a similar process. And it's been really successful for us. And one of the keys is that as those get developed, you identify those people in the community that are passionate about that topic, so it doesn't become just the city doing it. It's a partnership, an ongoing one that's been forged through us working around these different projects together over that decade. And many of them are the same people that we'll be working with, the same organizations that we'll be working with on the next 4. And it's small things, anything from starting our own community leadership academy all the way up to these massive building construction projects. But it's the community telling us what they want. And by doing that, they're wrapping themselves around these priorities and ultimately helping to advance them forward. I think one of the opportunities they'd have, Marion at this point, we're right on the cusp of being large enough to say what I would have would be neighborhoods. But I could really see something like that playing out in larger communities like Fort Collins, where you really understand what is it the neighborhood would like to see for itself.
That's my mute button. Thank you so much. Okay, Melissa.
Thank you so much. So certainly, I think that we're in a day and age where people have strong and differing opinions about topics, but also in working for a city, you find a variety of stakeholders that have different opinions and different perspectives. And we have an obligation to engage with them, not only to give them an opportunity to speak, but for us as city leaders to understand what those issues are and to better consider how we could address them in the projects that we are considering undertaking. And a really great example of this is in my time in another community here in Wisconsin and Sussex. We had a project along our main street in which we wanted to reconstruct our City Hall building into a civic center. And that building was an old elementary school right in the heart of downtown on our main street. And so we had residents who actually went to school there and had those memories. And it was also a fixture of the community for decades and an important one to people. But it wasn't working in terms of what the community needed for the next 30 or 40 years in terms of public space. And so through a facilitative dialogue and facilitative leadership style, what we did was we brought in stakeholders from all of the different community groups, residents, business owners, nonprofits, community partners, and really started some of that intensive dialogue process about what are you looking for in terms of this next project and how can we work together to deliver it. The vision for that Civic Center project was really to bring our nonprofits in under that roof. And so it was about including space for the Historic Society and including space for the food pantry and the senior center that we operated, as well as other public spaces all into one building. And so really taking that time to dialogue with our stakeholders, understand what their values were and build connection and understanding on where those values intersected for the greater good of the community allowed us to really get that project across the finish line. And from there, we were able to take that important dialogue, what we learned, make those changes and have those important neighborhood meetings, We popped up in every park in the community to talk with our residents about it, to focus on that future and the value add that was coming from it. Ultimately, we were able to construct that project. It was a wonderful addition to downtown and the community. It would not have been as good without that facilitated dialogue and learning and adapting from our stakeholders. So I see a lot of value in continuing that level of community engagement and dialogue with important partners.
All right, thank you so much. Okay, Mark.
All right, I'm following a lot of good answers. I hate to repeat what I said before, but I think on this particular topic, the relationships that you establish are so important. Before you're in a room on a difficult topic, people are going to have different opinions on things. That's the nature of the time we live. So if you're only going to the community, or you're only going to those stakeholders when there is a project in front of them, and you know that there's going to be different opinions, you're not setting yourself up for success. So the relationships and the process are so important. An example in Madison, we had a piece of legislation in the downtown area restricting alcohol licenses. So similar to Fort Collins, a college town, a rub between alcohol issues and the college, making sure that our downtown remained a vibrant place where it was welcoming, inclusive for everybody in the community. The reaction was to create this essentially restriction on new alcohol licenses in a certain way. And we were basically looking at reopening that discussion. And so we knew right off the bat it would be a controversial topic. So again, we had the relationships, spent the time developing those relationships going into the process, then made sure the process was solid, and created a subcommittee that I staffed, and really anybody from our public health perspective to the Tavern League, which if anybody knows anything about the Tavern League in Wisconsin, it's one of the more politically strong organizations that I've worked with. The university, talking about business mix in the downtown. And I think what was great about leaning on those relationships is that we were able to go back to what the intended outcomes were of the original legislation, to say, we cared about business mix, absolutely. We cared about the vibrancy. We cared about the police issues, the crime that we were seeing at a certain hour of the night. So how could we create a solution that didn't stifle business innovation and get the types of concepts that would really add to the vibrancy downtown, but at the same time continue on the trend we were seeing with limiting the late night crime and other alcohol related issues. And I think we got to a solid solution. I won't go into the detail of that, but the point is that it was a contentious issue. Not everybody was happy with all the pieces of the final result, but those relationships were maintained because of what we had established previously, and that we all participated in a meaningful way throughout the process.
Great, thank you. So I'm looking at our time, and what I don't want to do is take us over time. So I'm gonna wrap this up. Thank you all so much. Just really a breadth of knowledge and ability represented here, and really, really appreciate it. I don't know if other people can see, but for those who are interested, we had as many as 40 people listening in at some point. I think we're wrapping up here at like 38. For those who are on, I do want to reiterate, we now have our feedback form up online. It is on the Our City page, where we have the Deputy City Manager tile. So you may have found the link to this Zoom meeting there. But we're very interested in anyone who listened in, feedback that you would like to provide. And for others who may not know, we have candidate information there as well, if you wanted to read up a little more. So I know we do a very robust process here. And again, I appreciate you all hanging in there and taking the time to join us tonight and over these few days that I know are very packed for you. So unless I hear any voices from beyond without video, giving me any instructions I've forgotten, we're gonna say good night and thank you again very much. Appreciated getting to know all you all and your experiences a little more.
Thank
Thank you. I'll see you tomorrow morning.
Thank you. Good night.
Yeah, thanks,
Thank you.
Jenny. Thanks, everybody.